Okay, here we are. I am here with Shauné Hayes. Shauné, thank you for joining me on the Clean Food Dirty Girl podcast. Super happy to have you here and to learn more about um, your journey, which is quite the journey. We were talking before I hit record, and I had interviewed Neil Barnard for an episode a few weeks back, and then when we got off uh, the Zoom or whatever, I said, "Hey, who should I talk to for the podcast? Do you have any good recommendations?" And he said, "You got to talk to Shauné." So he put me in touch, and so we are here. And I checked out your website and all the cool things that you're doing. So I want to get into all of that. So welcome to the show. Can you just introduce yourself and tell us a little like elevator pitch on who you are?
Absolutely. Well, thank you, first of all, for having me, and shout out to Dr. Barnard for mentioning me. I really do appreciate that. But my name is Shauné Hayes, and I say that I'm a wellness warrior, if you will, really on this mission to just help people just feel better, eat better, look better. And that is a result of my own journey where, I struggled to get healthy and well for many years. And so, found this lifestyle and that being a vegan, plant based lifestyle. And it has just changed my life and changed my existence, changed how I show up in the world. And I just want to get that message out there because I really feel like it can help others as well.
I love that. It's so hard to go on a journey like that and not feel this pull to want to then help other people, because you, like, for me it's like I don't want to keep this in, and I see that happen to a lot of people who kind of start and have one career and one trajectory, and then they make these changes. And in the plant-based world, I think it happens a lot. And so I want to get into your struggle and your journey, but can you talk a little bit about that pull to then share with the world what you've learned?
Absolutely. It was just, I guess for me, it was just very eye opening. Like, when I started to just kind of change, what I was eating and noticing changes in my body, noticing that weight I had been trying to lose on any and every plan was finally coming off with ease. And just how I was feeling, the fact that I was dealing with chronic issues and they were reversing because of changing the food. I'm like, okay, this is a secret that no one told me about. Like, here I am, have been struggling for decades, and no one said, like, really look at the food. And so it was very much like, okay, I have got to get this word out. I've got to get the message out. Like, people need to know this. And so that really was the pull. Like, I didn't want to keep it to myself because people were asking, like, how are you losing the weight now? Like, what are you doing? And how are you keeping it off? And so it was like, okay, I need to share this. And then also going down that education hole, if you will, of wanting to know more about that connection, with food and diet and food and disease, was like, okay, a whole world opened up. And I'm like, this information has to get out there more.
I love that, because it's sort of like when you first make this switch, it's just the very top of the iceberg. There's so much to learn underneath,
Yes,
and it's so powerful.
definitely.
So you had struggled for many years with your health, um, and there's, as we know, like, diets can work short term. It's like lots of people can and do lose weight on a diet, but then you get off the diet, and then it comes right back. So can you talk a little bit about, like, when did you start struggling with your weight? When did that start for you? Because I think I read on your website that it started quite early. So
Yes.
can you talk about that?
It did, 12 years old. So I just remember being a kid and very aware of my weight being maybe the bigger one in the class. You think about your classmates and just also being teased and called names and things of that nature. So 12 years old, I joined, my first weight loss program. And that really kind of set off this, what I called a roller coaster ride of just yo-yo and trend dieting, just really trying to find the one, I say, the magic that would help me to keep the weight off. But what I ended up doing was, like you said, trying many different diets. And yes, I would find success, but nothing was long term, nothing was sustainable. And once I got off of those plans or what have you, yeah, the weight came right back, and many of them were very restrictive. And so it really wasn't living. It didn't feel like living. It felt more like suffering. Like, I couldn't have some of my favorite things, or not really knowing how to incorporate some of those foods. And so it was just very unpleasant. I'd say for 30 years it was just very much trying to figure out and just going from one thing to the next. If something new came out, I was going to try it. So yeah. Yeah.
Hmm. So a lot of the the fad diets that a lot of them come and go, and
Yes.
then a lot of them just get recycled and
Yes.
packaged differently.
Definitely.
You said that you were looking for the one, but a whole food plant-based way of eating never crossed your path
It did not.
during that
It
time.
sure did not. Yeah, it did not.
Oh. And so you were in your 40s when you found. So how did you stumble across a plant-based diet? How did you learn about
Right.
it?
So I stumbled across it. So yeah, I was in my kind of 40s early 40s when I started my what I called a wellness journey, a road to fitness journey. And what was different this time was that I worked with a health coach. And so although she was not fully whole food plant based, one of the things that she helped me to realize or to help me to learn was how to incorporate more, of the whole foods in what I was eating, how to include more, fruits, vegetables, whole grains, and just learning about different foods that I just really was unfamiliar with. And so that is really kind of where it started. It was very much just let's try to add more, servings of vegetables. Let's try to add more this. Let's try to add more that. Let's pull away from this a little bit. And so it was more so an addition thing. So I think a lot of times we think this lifestyle is very limited or you can't have this. I love her approach because it was more so let's add to. Let's not think about restriction because I had done that, right, for decades. Restricted and limited things. And so her approach was different. And so just with that being the beginning of it, I started to notice changes in my body. So I'm like, okay, I want to keep doing this. Let me add more and pull away even more from some of those, foods that I was eating before. So that's really how it started. Yeah.
And then so how long from that point then did you find your way to like a whole food plant-based primarily?
I would say probably a year. So started working with her in 2017. And I did like a 6-week program with her. And so then after that wrapped, I kind of started finding my own way and just kind of doing my own thing. And so again, just adding more, of those whole food plant-based foods. And then, I came across what's the book? Dr. Campbell, I'm drawing a blank, the China study. That was the eye opener in terms of reading that book and really making the connection between not just diet and disease, but also the power of plants. And so that's where it really started to like, okay, I want to do this, all in. And that was probably 2018. Yeah.
So that's so cool that your journey led you to where you are. I mean, really what a gift and it really changed your whole life. So what did change? I know that you what were some of the transformations that happened during that year and then beyond?
Absolutely. So, one of the things just we go to the doctor every year for our, wellness physicals or what have you. And so my numbers started to improve. The high blood pressure numbers started to get better. Cholesterol started to go down. I was pre-diabetic and my, blood sugar was being monitored. That also started to improve. The weight, like I said, was coming off a lot easier than it had ever, than I'd ever done before. And I wasn't counting calories like I had done before. I wasn't restricting myself and I wasn't thinking about, weighing my food and all the things that I had done before. And so things were happening with ease, which blew my mind. And the other thing too, I noticed I suffered with a condition called polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. And so for me, it was marked by very just irregular cycles, and I struggled to get pregnant. I had infertility and struggled to conceive my kids. But what I noticed, that this was one of the biggest changes, was just the regulation of my cycle, and then just how that never happened before. And so I'm like, okay, what is going on? The only thing I've changed, I'm fixing food, right? So what is going on? And so those were some of the major changes. Indigestion, suffered from that. That went away. Lower back pain, arthritis. I had chronic arthritis that I was dealing with throughout my body. That got better. And so I was like, okay, there's something here.
Yeah, no doubt. And once you start experiencing those things, I'm sure you're like, wait a minute, what is happening to my body right now?
Absolutely.
And why haven't I heard about this up until this point?
Exactly.
Right?
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. So you had mentioned that, so eating this way and not counting calories and not measuring things out, and I know that you had done a lot of that because you were on so many different diets. And so what was that like to be able to have that, because it's a whole mindset shift. And I think that it can fuck with people.
Yeah.
In the beginning of like, okay, I'm eating more and I'm not limited on how much I can eat. and yet I'm losing weight easier than I ever have. I mean, can you talk a little bit about how that was for you after so many decades really
Yeah.
of dieting?
Absolutely. I would say one of the biggest things for me was just kind of learning about just mindful, intuitive eating. And again, I do credit my, health coach a lot for that because it was more so, I'm someone who grew up used to breakfast, lunch, dinner, and those were like big meals. There were no snacks in between. And then breakfast was always the heavy pancakes with the heavy syrup, and it was always the meat, the bacon, and all of that. And so just learning that I can have vegetables for breakfast, and whether you want to call it breakfast or not, it's just food that I'm having at this time of morning. And so even the shift around that, right? Like breakfast doesn't mean that it has to be all the things that we're just kind of used to breakfast being. And so that was a real big thing. And then also with intuitive eating, it was very much, am I hungry? Like really listening to my body, taking a moment, pausing and saying, am I hungry, or am I eating just because it's 12 noon and we're supposed to eat lunch around that time, right? Or it's 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, and just supposed to eat dinner around that time. And so that was another big shift as well, is just kind of getting out of the, you know, that kind of regimented way of eating and just really tuning more into my body. It was huge, huge, huge shift.
Yeah. I think that you're right. So much of this is like people come into doing this for various reasons. And I know a lot of people who are in our community, and I'm wondering if you see this too, find you and say, okay, I want to get my cholesterol down, or my doctor says I'm pre-diabetic and I really don't I want to pump the brakes on that. And so they start for one kind of reason, or maybe they want to lose weight and they heard somebody had lost weight. And then, but what I find is so often it's this beautiful journey about really changing the relationship that you have with food and changing the relationship you have with your body, with yourself, with your person. Can you talk a little bit about that relationship change?
Absolutely. That was huge because, again, when you're thinking about someone like a kid, 12 years old, struggling with, not just their weight, but then also self esteem, confidence, and how that was crushed and just bruised and broken at such an early age. From again, people, from family, even, right? And so having to deal with that, learning how to just love myself, love my body, knowing that yes, you can change it, but you got to love it first as it is. And so that was another huge shift for me. That was very, very huge. And just, accepting, some things, that I couldn't change. Like, some things are genetic. Like, I got my mom's legs, or maybe it's something that I don't like about my body that, okay, you got that from a family member. Get over it. But it was just very much coming from this place of, again, just really just kind of reframing how I spoke to myself, how I saw myself, and not being so critical of myself, not, being proud of the success that I had made, and telling myself that I love you, and just those little things really, really made a huge difference. That self-talk.
Yeah, that's like some big life-changing stuff
Oh
there.
yeah.
And you mentioned something like it was really important that you love yourself where you're at right now in order to make the changes. And I think that so many people think that that's impossible because they're like, well, if I love myself, that means that there's nothing wrong with me and I won't change. And how could I love myself if I'm not, to the place where I want to be. And I think you said it really well. Like you had to love yourself where you were at in order for changes to happen. And I think for most people, they're like, wait, how do you do that? So can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, for me, I kind of started to incorporate different practices. So, like, I'm a huge fan of journaling. I'm a huge fan of, practicing gratitude, and just, kind of starting with just, again, positive self-talk, being in a moment and saying, what am I grateful for? Or let's just say that I got on the scale that week and maybe the number went up. Okay, well, how can we shift that? This is just one moment, but how can we shift that and make it positive? So I really had to again talk to myself in a more positive light and try to put things in a more positive spin. And in reference to the scale, I actually stopped getting on the scale for a minute there because again I was just so messed up by it. If I'm honest, it just became this thing of torture, and just like everything was based on the number. It was about the number, the number, and that's just such a limited way of thinking when you're trying to do what I did in terms of getting healthy. There's so many other things that you can use as measurements of progress than a number. So yeah.
Can you talk a little bit about what you use to measure progress when you put it on the scale?
Yes, absolutely. So, how did my energy feel? So, one of the things I would ask
Mm-hmm.
myself, even when it came to eating food, okay, how is this food going to make me feel? Is it going to make me feel sluggish? Is it going to give me energy? Is it going to help me sleep at night? Is my sleep improving? I was someone who did not get good sleep, and I saw that improving. Um, Things like my skin, it started to clear up, right? And just again, just so many other ways to measure things, like even the measuring tape, like just kind of using measurements as opposed to, just the number on the scale. How's my flexibility improving? I couldn't do this last week or 2 weeks ago, but now I can do this. Or I started out walking 1 mile. Okay, now I'm up to 3 miles. So my endurance is getting better. So again, so many different ways that we can measure progress and success. And, that it's not so dependent on the scale. But then again, the scale, the numbers were, starting to come down, and my body
Yeah.
was changing. It was absolutely changing.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you took a very holistic approach where it wasn't just about the number. It was
Yes,
like you wanted to really get healthy.
definitely.
Right. And then the weight came off as a result of what you were, of getting healthy.
Yeah. Yep.
Right.
It was just, it was,
Yeah.
when I think about just all the other attempts and how this one was so different, it was more so a healing from the inside out. It just amazes me that this would end up, happening in that way.
Right.
Hmm.
Yeah. So it was more like peaceful, and the all of the prior attempts seemed like,
They were
really hard, a
hard.
struggle.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So was that transition then? Okay, so you had done a lot of diets when you weren't diet, because okay, so the nature of dieting is you go on and off from
Right,
them.
right.
So when you weren't dieting for the majority of your life, what did your food look like and your lifestyle look like?
Oh, it was very much. So I'm from the Midwest. Okay, grew up in Kansas City, Missouri. Love my hometown. But it's Kansas City is also a big barbecue place. So I very much
Mm-hmm.
was eating, lots of that. Before I found this lifestyle. And then also, I grew up in a household where they would, fry bacon, save the grease, and then use that the very next day, to do something. And so those were some of the ways that I would start to cook my food as well, thinking that this is
Mm-hmm.
how you cook. And so again, kind of cooked like that, cooked with lots of oil, thought I had to, use oil, pretty much in everything. Fast food, ate out a lot. One of my other businesses is in the makeup industry. And so when you're booked from, gig to gig to gig, you're trying to feed yourself in between that. And so I was very much feeding myself just all unhealthy things. So fast food restaurants, convenience stores. When you're on set, there's lots of donuts and things of that nature. So that really is how I was feeding myself. Lots of highly processed foods, and fast foods, eating out a lot, not cooking a lot either. Yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. So quite the contrast
very
to
much.
a whole food plant-based way of eating, which is pretty much the exact opposite
Absolutely.
of that. So because your palate was used to that type of eating and that type of food, was there a period, like what was the transition like for you, like as far as how you perceived the food or enjoyed the food? Like was it hard for you to make that jump?
Because of when I started this journey and because of how broken down and sick my body was, I would say that it wasn't as hard as I thought it was going to be. Or a lot of people, assume that I know that had to be hard if you've been eating this way your entire life and then all of a sudden. But again, because of how sick I was and because of how overweight I was, that transition wasn't hard because again, I go back to what I noticed as I started to add more of those whole foods, to my eating. I just felt better, and I wanted to continue feeling that way. And so for me, I'm
Yeah.
like, you know what? I like this better than how I was feeling when I was eating this, so I'm
Right.
gonna I'm gonna keep eating this way.
I'll take the chickpeas and kale if I can just keep feeling
Yes,
this way.
exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. I think I've noticed that too in our community. It's like the more somebody really wants to change, the easier it is. Right? If
Yeah.
somebody's only, and that's why you have to kind of want to do this for yourself, or you can't change other people unless they're ready.
Right.
Because if somebody doesn't really want to do this, it's so easy to just stick to the, really highly addictive foods that most people are used to eating.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But when you have a reason, a really big, important reason to you that you really want to make these changes, I think that it is much easier. And I also think that our bodies are so innately intelligent, right? Like we have this intelligence in our body. And so I have to believe, even though it's a little woo woo, that your body was like, yes, this is what we've been needing. Did you get a sense of that?
Absolutely. I absolutely got a sense of that. And I'd even say, one of the things that when I'm coaching clients now, since I'm a health coach, we talk about reshaping taste, reshaping your food and what you crave. And so the more that I stopped eating, those highly processed foods and things of that nature, my body started to crave more of those whole foods. Like seriously, I would be like, oh my gosh, I can't wait to get home and have a big salad with all these vegetables. And so, it very much, started to get used to eating that way and craving those things and just, yeah. So I think it was major.
Yeah. And that's such a cool spot to be in when you're craving the food that is going to, do great things for your body. It's like when you start craving that, that like this is probably going to stick. Because I mean, how often when you were on your diets, were you craving the diet food or were you craving,
Right.
on all of your various diets?
Right.
Like,
Yeah, I wasn't. It was more so like, okay, what do I have to have? Okay, let me check this off. Okay, I had that. It's
yeah.
very much just regimented. Like, okay, I measured that. I had that. It wasn't. Ooh, I can't wait to have the plain rice cake. you know,
Yeah.
never,
Yeah.
never
Give
was
me
like,
another dry rice
right,
cake. Yum.
exactly. I'll never look forward to that.
Who would? Rice
right?
cakes? No.
No.
Unless they have a bunch of yummy hummus and fresh tomatoes and
Yes,
sprouts on top. Okay, I'm
yes.
in. But
Avocado.
yeah,
Yep.
the dreaded rice cake. So many people are going to be able to relate to
Yes,
that.
good. Love
Too
it.
funny. Okay, so when you started this journey, you're working with this health coach, you're adding in more fruits and veggies and whole grains and beans and legumes, and you're starting this transition. What does your family, your community, your friends, what do they think about what you're doing?
So initially, I wasn't like letting them know. It was very much so like I'm on this journey. I didn't start, like making it public because I don't know. I just wasn't in that space yet. It was very much like, just doing this for me, and I didn't want to hear anybody's opinion or what anybody thought. I'm like, I'm doing this for Shauné, and so I probably didn't start making it public until about maybe a year into, maybe around 2019 in terms of social media and just kind of, calling this my road to fitness journey. And if anything, I would say people were curious, like, what are some of the meals that you're eating? Like, how are you like cooking this and things of that nature? But it definitely wasn't any ridicule or any criticism or anything like that. So I would say that everyone, for the most part, has been very supportive.
Okay.
Yeah.
And what about your immediate family? Like, did they get on board with this eventually, or
Right.
are they, yeah.
Yeah. So
How did that affect how they're eating?
definitely. So my husband, when he started seeing the change in me, he was just, oh, he pretty much would eat what I ate, So he would,
Okay.
have, some of what I made, and he started to just kind of see the change in me, and then also him going to the doctor as well, and seeing some numbers are going in the wrong direction. He was like, okay, I want to start incorporating more of this as well. So it was very much one of those things where he started to come on board too. But I didn't force this down anyone's throat or just say you got to eat like this. It was like, I'm going to eat this way, and we'll just see if they notice, if they want to taste, come along. I do have 3 kids, and so with them, it was very much, mommy's eating this way now, and you have to taste it. If you don't like it, that's fair, but you can't look at it, you can't frown upon it before, trying it, So it's just kind of keeping it fair and also helping them to be open, to a different lifestyle. And so that's how I just kind of started to incorporate it as far as into my immediate family with my husband and 3 kids.
Okay. So there's a lot of people in our community who are like, okay, and it usually happens with, one person in the family starts for whatever reason. And then it's like the family is either not on board,
Right.
not open to it, or maybe a little like, whatever. And, maybe they'll get on board, maybe they won't.
Right.
But during that time, I hear a lot of feedback that like, okay, well, what do I do? Because I don't want to cook multiple meals for people.
Right.
Right. And so if you are the person making this transition who does most of the cooking, then like, were you making separate meals for your family and for yourself, and and if so, how did you manage that and how did you feel about that?
So both me and my husband do cook. So luckily, I'm definitely not the only person who was making the meals. And no, I was not making multiple meals. I was like, this is how mommy's eating. If you want to eat some of mommy's food, You can have that. My husband, what he would sometimes do with the kids is like, they became more so like pescatarian, I would say. And so he would,
Yeah.
still have, like some fish or whatever for them. But again, mostly what I was doing was vegetables. So it always paired great, with whatever he might have made for
Right.
them. But it was very much so, no, I'm not making multiple meals. I'm not cooking animal products again. I'm not, you know what I mean? It was
Yeah.
just for me, just
Yeah.
that decision. Like, no, I don't want to do that. And so, but yeah, so that's kind of how we kind of finagled it in our household. And it's worked, it's definitely worked. And so with me, adopting this lifestyle is very much also educating my kids along the way, because what I don't want them to look at mommy as she's making us eat this way, but understand why
Mm.
I'm eating this or why I want you to eat this, understand what it's doing for your body. And so they're very knowledgeable when it comes to nutrition. I can say
I
that.
bet they are. Yeah.
So
Yeah.
yeah.
Well, that's awesome. I mean, how old are your kids?
So I have twin boys who are 13 years old now, and then my daughter's
Okay.
17. So
Okay.
yeah.
Okay, so you're setting them up for a much different path
Yes.
than you were on at that
Yes.
age. And
Absolutely.
so that's really like breaking a cycle.
Oh,
And
absolutely.
so they're going to, go into this knowing that there is this is this one way, the way that you were looking for when you were younger, right? That does
Absolutely.
actually exist, but we just don't know about it. So I think that's awesome. You sound like a really awesome mom. And so I'm wondering, like, when you finally did, find this way of eating, started implementing it, started seeing changes, were you like surprised, or how did you feel like, okay, where has this been all my life? Like, and we talked about that a little bit in the beginning, and I think that is one reason why you're doing what you're doing
Right.
now. But were you kind of like pissed off that you didn't know about this sooner?
That's a very good question, because I'm thinking back, like, why didn't I know? You know what? I think it might have been so that when you think about, the word vegan, I think there was always this kind of negative connotation surrounding that word.
Mm,
You think about, like, people in terms of just the extreme side of it is really what I just remember when I thought about, the word vegan. But as I started to learn and educate myself, I'm like, actually no, there's just a connotation around it that is just so inaccurate and just not correct. And so and then also meeting people, who really started to kind of teach me, like why this is so beneficial for our bodies, why when it comes to disease this is so great, and just kind of reframing that whole concept about, oh, I'm vegan. I'm not walking around yelling in people's faces, saying how
mm,
dare you, you know what I mean? Yeah, and so
mm-hmm.
I think that's part of it, just really just having this kind of, negative association with that. But then when I think about, take away all of that and just think about basics like fruits, vegetables, whole grains, beans, legumes, like all the things that are out there that exist for us to eat. Gosh, I don't know why I did not know about this lifestyle sooner. When I even go into the
Yeah.
doctor, it was very much, oh gosh, it was just the things that they even wanted me to eat and try. It was very much just not that. It was just lots of processed, the breads and again the meats and stuff. And so I don't know. It's interesting. I think that as nutrition has advanced and as we're learning more, I just think now that we're in a place where the word is getting out there and just I think social media definitely has made a difference in
Mm-hmm.
terms of being able to reach more people and get that message out there too.
Yeah, yeah, and getting the message. I mean, you're right, because I think for a long time, I mean, social media does play a huge part. I think for a long time, if you were talking about plant-based eating, it was very much in the box of vegan eating.
Yeah,
And so, and veganism can have a bad rep
right.
in general. Um, but there was like, I think I've been vegetarian my whole life. I stopped eating animal products in 2009, I think.
Okay.
But there wasn't, it was very like boxed. It was like, okay, you're vegetarian or you're vegan. And what I've seen now over the past, decade plus is like all of the beautiful shades of this way of eating are
Yes.
appearing,
Yes.
right? It's like,
Absolutely.
it's not just
Right.
vegan or not. It's like
Definitely.
there's adding more plants. Like you could do that. You could just add a whole bunch of more whole plant foods. And it's funny when people say, "Well, I don't eat vegan food." I'm like, "But have you ever had, some pasta with some marinara sauce?"
Yeah. Yeah. That's a
vegan.
vegan dish.
It's a vegan dish.
Absolutely.
Yeah. And so hopefully now people like you and Dr. Barnard and all of these, trailblazers are are getting the word out there so that we do live in a world where it is more accessible for at least people to know, right?
Absolutely.
Because there's a lot of people who know about this, and then it's like, okay, well, it's not for me, and that's fine. But for so many people, they just don't know.
Yeah, exactly.
They just don't realize how their life could be different. And you are such an example. Like, your life completely changed.
Completely.
With just changing what you eat.
Right. That's what I tell people.
It's bananas.
Came off medication. I didn't have to get on medication. I came off medication. And so, I just can't say enough about just making the decision just, to really embrace this lifestyle. And even going back to what you said, just when I start with people, let's just add more. Don't think about subtraction.
Yeah.
Don't think about taking away right now. Let's just add more. And that really starts to help them shift their mind as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a really good way to think about it, especially for people who have been on diet after diet after diet.
Yes.
That can be really refreshing.
Absolutely.
And like, oh, well, that's different.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me then so I know that you have a makeup business where you do makeup for people, and then so you were doing that, and then at what point did you decide I want to like start sharing this side with people, with the lifestyle stuff, with the health stuff, with the food stuff? So did you know like right away that you wanted to do that, or can you talk a little bit about that process?
Yep. So I would say my life as a being a full-time makeup artist and owning my own business, managing a team of people, it was a very demanding, career business that I've been doing full time, for the past 12 years. But even prior to that, in building the business, it was just very demanding. And so I would say that demand led to burnout, which, led to poor eating, which led to, just me, again, not taking care of my body. And so when I started my journey in 2017 and started making these changes, it was also, awakening me to the fact that I needed to shift how I was running my business as well. And so when I think about that, I started to just kind of restructure and change some things. And so it was just like, you know what? I love makeup. I love beauty. But beauty and health go hand in hand. I work with people and I show them how to be beautiful on the outside. Now I want to add how you can be beautiful from the inside. And so for me, it actually fit. And so I still do makeup. But I have combined the beauty and the health, and so that's where with that I was just like, okay, I want to really start sharing about this in terms of, as a makeup artist, I would, like I said, go from gig to gig and just eat all the terrible things. I would wear dark and black clothing a lot because I hated my appearance, and as makeup artists, we always wear black, and so that became very comforting, but also a crutch. And so I just really kind of started to share about that, even in the beauty space, and just kind of combining the two, So yeah, beauty and health. Inside out.
That's so cool. It fits so well.
Right. Yes.
It fits so well. Like, I love that. I have this belief that we are all like everything that we've done up until this point, right? Wherever it is, when your journey is like at a crossroads or when there's something new, like you might think, okay, well, I'm switching careers, but did you really? Like, you just kind of morphed what you were already doing, and everything that you had been doing in that career kind of then could give you this unique perspective and this unique way to now approach what you were going to set out to do. So I think that that's beautiful. Yes. And I love all of the colors that you wear. On your website, your earrings today, your hair, your clothes. I love that it's just, it's like plants.
It is.
Right? So many colors.
Yes, it is. And just vibrancy, because I really want to help people live vibrant lives, right? So that's the other part of that too. Yeah, love color.
I love it. There's so much goodness in here. Like it's about food, and it's about so much more than the food.
Definitely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And again, I said it before, but this process changes you. So many people, they've changed careers, changed where they live, changed even who they're with, or changed, how they show up, what they do with their time. Like there's just so many changes that can happen from just changing what you eat for breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and in between.
This has been a life transformation, I tell you. I tell people that it's been a physical transformation, but it's been bigger than that. It's been so much bigger than that too. Yeah.
Well, I'm so glad that you took what you learned and are now expanded on that and now offering it to people, because I think we would miss out if you didn't do that. So thank you for sharing what you share with the world and for sharing your experience here with me today. Where can people find out more about you?
Yeah, so on my website, theshaunelife.com, and then on Instagram at the Shauné Life as well, Facebook at the Shauné Life. Try to keep everything consistent. YouTube at the Shauné Life.
Okay, and we'll link to all of that in the show notes as well.
Awesome.
Shauné, thank you for talking with me. I loved hearing about your story and your journey and getting to know you. You're just a delight.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me, Molly, and just allowing me to share this with your audience. So thank you.
Yeah, and I'm so happy for you, and I'm so happy for your family too.
Yes.
Like it fills me with so much joy to hear people who have found this way of eating, and it sounds cultist, like a cult, right? It sounds like,
right.
Oh, you've joined us, thank you. But it really is so wonderful just to hear about all of the positive changes after so many years of struggling.
Absolutely.
So
Definitely.
I'm really, really happy for you.
Thank you again. I really appreciate it.
Awesome. Bye.
Bye.